Marco is a pretty cool dude in One Piece. I don't think anyone ever hated Marco for any reason. Marco was loved in Marineford. The things he did for his pirate crew, the things that he did for Luffy and company, he was pretty epic there. And he was absolutely a mainstay in Wano country. And Marco is, again, very respectable. Knowing that he's a doctor, going back to Whitebeard's hometown, healing some of the injured and sick there, that was pretty cool seeing Marco do that. And Marco is, at this point in time, making some sort of play with Miss Bucking, the real Stussy, to maybe be involved in a Weevil operation. That's the last time we heard about Marco. So that should be going on probably at some time real soon, off screen, potentially. But Marco as a character doesn't get a lot of theories and focus for obvious reasons. However, during the God Valley flashback, there were some intriguing things that were going on there. Because during the God Valley flashback, we get to see who was very likely to be his father, quote unquote, his father, Polo Graham. So it took Oda over 1,000 chapters to finally do the Marco Polo meme, where Marco and they have his father Polo. So Polo Graham is the captain of the Polo Pirates, and during God Valley, he winds up teaming up with Whitebeard, and then later on in the Oden flashback, some odd years later, we see Marco as a teenager part of that crew. So even though we don't know who Polo Graham married, so who is Marco's mom, and we don't know what happened to Polo himself, whether he's alive or dead, the clear connection between Marco the Phoenix, or Marco Graham potentially, and Polo Graham, it's as clear as crystal. These guys are virtually the same. So when I was reviewing some content from God Valley, I tweeted about Polo Graham. I was like, yo, is this guy still alive? What's going on with Polo Graham right now? Because he could still be alive in the story. We just never see him. He could be elsewhere, even though Marco is much older now. And even on Whitebeard's home island, we don't see any signs of Polo Graham. So where's Polo Graham if he actually still is alive? And there were some very intriguing responses, particularly one that caught my attention, which even said, yo, this theory I'm gonna cop. Because it's a theory that I remember hearing about way back when Polo Graham was introduced, but I never really gave any limelight. But if Marco is gonna be an important character for the story in terms of making moves on former warlords with Miss Bucking, if let's say he's gonna wind up joining in the final war in some capacity with Monkey D. Luffy and allies, because he did also assist, of course, Luffy during Marineford in various ways, then Marco is gonna be someone that may have a bigger role than you first think, particularly if this theory is correct. And this theory was from Typical Joe. Typical Joe says, and I quote, "Crack theory. Polo and Marco are the same person. Rather than being father and son, Polo died and was reborn as Marco through the power of the Phoenix Devil fruit." Now, that's sexy. And there are other folks that are saying the same thing too, where another guy named Sam on that Twitter thread was saying, my fan theory is that whenever the owner of the Phoenix fruit dies, they actually get resurrected at the age they ate the fruit. So this guy's way more specific. At the age they ate the fruit, they get resurrected with no memories of who they once were. So Marco is Graham, Polo, but Graham died and resurrected and lost all of his memories of who he was. And in that post, you can see a similar trend here where Marco's a previous incarnation. Ziz says, yes, obviously Phoenix never dies, just gets reborn. You can see the trend here where Polo Graham essentially is Marco the Phoenix's reincarnation. Polo Graham resurrected. But the stipulation that he has no memories of his past life and is resurrected at the point where the person consumed the fruit. This is one of those sort of crazy, long-lasting abilities. These things are potentially possible. Even though Marco is not of the god class of different power, like in the same vein as the Nika, or in the same vein as the devil, Marco is still a mythical Zoan, and mythical Zoans have very unique properties compared to other powers in the story. Some of them tend to have very unique, almost supernatural elements to them, and in many ways mimicking either Paramecia powers and or Logia powers. Typically speaking, when it comes to Marco tends to mimic a Logia, where Marco can take a lot of damage as the Phoenix and he just automatically recovers from that damage right then and there. where his body almost seems to be intangible like a Logia's body because of that regeneration factor. But that's the power you can argue at a baseline. There is also the potential possibility of Devil Fruit awakening. Now, to be fair, the only mythical Zoan that we have seen in the story so far to awaken was Luffy. Kaido, as far as we know, even though he had an insane bag, is not awakened. As far as we know, Sengoku is not awakened. As far as we know, Yamato is not awakened. The only mythical Zoan to awaken their powers was Monkey D. Luffy. And for him, you can argue, theoretically, that without Gear 5, he's not the Nika. He is the Gomu. But with Gear 5, he is the human fruit model Nika. I know it's a theory that folks don't like, but it is very possible to where he is kind of like in all stratas of the fruits, and it's only when he's in that Gear 5 awakened form that he truly is the sun god Nika. But for Marco particularly, the idea could be at a baseline, we see how his powers work. But if he can awakening his powers could be when he is able to achieve resurrection or reincarnation. This could potentially mean that the power, let's just say that typical Joe and Sam are correct. Let's just say that he was a previous incarnation. It's very possible that Marco has several incarnations, like the Avatar. He has several incarnations that can go back for centuries upon centuries. Like in a very similar way to how Toki was moving in the story, where Toki is from the distant past, but she jumped to the present. She jumped to the present with her abilities and stopped her story at Oden's time. But Toki's ability allows her to sort of exist for an extended amount of time, quite literally, because she is skipping forward in time with the time ability. And then you have someone like Brook, where Brook's powers, in theory, can last quite a bit of time. Because Brook is now a skeleton, he can live essentially for as long as he can maintain his soul frequency, right? As long as his soul frequency is on a higher level, he will still exist. And so with the powers of the revive fruit, Brook has gained, you could argue, 9 immortality. There's been these memes or these images of Brook will be the longest lasting Straw Hat because he's effectively bones. He has no organs in the same vein as other people. And Brook will live for probably centuries to tell the story of Monkey D. Luffy and the Straw Hat crew. He already lived in the Florian Triangle for 50 plus years, and he didn't age damn near because, again, he's all skeleton, he's all bones. So even though the revive powers would probably in principle just revive someone after they had died, and then they probably get only 1 extra life, they get 1 extra stock. In Brook's case, he has the longest lasting stock possible because now he's a skeleton. So there are some powers in the story that can last, in theory, and have lasted for centuries upon centuries. Toki and Brook are examples of that. Marco/Polo could be an example of that too. And the downside to this would be what Sam says, where Sam says, okay, he's resurrected like the Phoenix, but he doesn't recall what happened in the past at all, which is obviously a way of relegating Marco's relevance in the story, because if Marco could remember, or if Polo could remember what he was in his previous life, then that would mean that he would have critical information about things in the past that only, let's say, the elders, the Gorosei or Imu, would be privy to. So maybe, for example, the first iterations of Marco the Phoenix or Polo Graham, they actually existed during the Void Century. They existed during the Void Century, and they were aware and they saw many things, but because they died and they resurrected, they forgot those things. And over the course of the centuries, it could have been in versions of Polo and Marco. Maybe there was a guy actually named Marco Polo, or in this case here, Polo Marco, because you can argue that Polo came before Marco. So let's say there was a guy named Polo Marco that existed way back when, even during the Void Century. That person would get their powers, and then they also died, they resurrected, and then they forgot who they were. And so the name, either Marco or Polo, stuck with them, and then so you have Polo. And then after they died again, they became Marco. And then they did it again, they became Polo. So the idea is that over the course of the centuries, they would be switching between Marco and Polo as they resurrected as the Phoenix user. And how these things can come like for the future of the story would probably be through 2 main ways. Number one would be someone like Emu, where Emu could potentially recognize Marco in the future. Let's say Marco, again, he's a part of the final war, he's an ally of the Straw Hat Pirates. And let's say that Marco is confronted by Emu, let's say on a minor clash, but Emu recognizes Marco. Let's say he calls him Polo, or he calls him Polo Marco, right? Some of that sort. And then you could have a realization of the importance of his fruit that has spanned for centuries to this point in time. If, of course, if there was a person named Polo Marco or whoever there was back during the Void Century. Another way this could actually come to revelation is not through Emu, and let's say we have direct contact, and then Emu, let's say, gives us a lore dump. No. It could be through someone like Pudding. Pudding has the memory fruit. And if Sam's take on the power is right, to where if Marco, every time he's resurrected, he forgets who he is, but he's resurrected at the point in time which he ate the fruit, Pudding is touted to be a key figure in the story, and we are in the final saga. What Big Mom and Kai were waiting for Pudding was her ability to awaken the third eye, but as of late, Pudding got captured by Blackbeard. However, Pudding has shown the ability called Memory Flashback, or Memory Fill Flashback. It's what we see in chapter 876, where Pudding is able to have memory film kind of go through the seducing woods, and then the souls of the trees, which belong to previous people that Big Mom had utilized to make the seducing woods, the souls of the people, they flash back, and then they believe that they're those people again, even though they're trees now. So the homies have flashback of their previous lives. They have flashbacks of their previous lives through the powers of the memory ability through someone like Pudding. If this is the case, where Marco is a resurrected dude, Marco Polo or Polo Marco, he doesn't remember, his brain doesn't recall, but maybe his soul recalls. Now I get back to the whole Brook thing, right? Brook's soul recalled who he was, even though he went to the land of the dead. The soul remembered everything, and then he resurrected as the current skeleton Brook, our boy, but he remembers everything. The way the Phoenix could work is that he forgets everything, but his soul could remember. If Pudding's ability allows for the soul itself to once again remember what happened in the past, that could definitely apply to someone like Marco. And again, Pudding is gonna have a key role in the story. So this, I think, is a really cool idea for the future for a character that's seemingly in the background, kind of miscellaneous, but they could have a big important role in the future where, yeah, maybe Polo did die for in the past, and bada bing, bada boom, here he is. The only downside to this theory is that in the Vivid cards, they do tell you that Marco was born 45 years ago in the Grand Line. However, the Vivid cards, they do change quite a bit on information, and they have been wrong in the past, like i.e. Shanks. In the Vivid cards, they said that Shanks became Emperor of the Sea before he met Luffy. At least they insinuated that. But we found out in chapter 957, the ultimate chapter, that actually no, Shanks became an emperor quite recently in the history of the story. Well after he met Luffy, around the time he fought against Loki, or he subdued Loki. So if the Vivid cards are wrong about that, and they have been wrong or they haven't updated in the future, then it's safe to say that someone like Marco's origins, where he was born and so on, the Grand Line, and 4 or 5 years ago, these things could be wrong. Around the time of God Valley, Marco's already born, Polo Grand probably his dad, and Marco's already like 6 or 7 years old. And that's strictly adhering to the Vivid cards. But again, Oda could prove the wrong in the future, and he modifies Marco's origin because he has more to offer for the story, a lot more. I think it's a cool theory. I think it's the best theory I've seen on Marco in a minute. And I'm pretty sure folks said this theory again around the point in time when Pologram was introduced. But again, after some rereading, seeing the response to my tweet, I can see it now. I definitely can see it now. Let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. Of course, YouTube members have that ability first. And of course, if you enjoy your boys' content in general, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.
See you. Bye-bye.